My mom told me the family reunion was canceled, but when I showed up, I found them celebrating without me. My name was scratched off the banner and my seat was given to my sister's dog. I made one phone call and 60 minutes later their entire world collapsed. My name's Laura Perkins, I'm 36 years old, and I used to believe that if you worked hard enough and loved hard enough, your family would eventually see you. I thought that putting in the hours, swallowing your pride, and always showing up with a smile was a down payment on belonging. That one day they'd turn around and say, "We couldn't have done it without you, Laura." That belief died on a Saturday night in July under a string of fairy lights in my parents' backyard, a place I had always considered a small corner of home. Mom had called me on Tuesday. Her voice, a familiar instrument she could tune to any emotion, was thick with fake sadness. "Honey, we have to cancel the summer party," she'd sighed into the phone. "Dad's just not feeling up to it, and Jason's completely swamped with that new project. Everyone's just too busy this year." I remember leaning against my kitchen counter, looking out at the empty street and feeling the familiar, dull ache of disappointment. I told her I understood. I even managed a cheerful, "Of course, no problem, we'll do it another time." I pretended it didn't sting, that the annual party wasn't the one time of year I felt, however briefly, like an actual part of things instead of a satellite in a distant orbit. I spent the rest of the week feeling adrift, a loneliness as thick and heavy as the summer humidity settling in my chest. My apartment, usually a peaceful refuge, felt like a cage. The silence was deafening, amplifying the feeling of being utterly disconnected. By Saturday evening, I couldn't stand it anymore. The quiet was screaming at me. I convinced myself it was about them, not me. I just dropped by with a nice bottle of wine to check on Dad. A peace offering for a war I wasn't even fighting, a quiet gesture to show I was still thinking of them, even if they weren't thinking of me. I parked down the street from their house, a habit I'd kept since my teenage years to avoid blocking the driveway for my parents. It always felt more considerate, and being considerate was my primary function in the family. The front of the house was dark, just as I'd expected, confirming Mom's story about a quiet night in. A wave of relief washed over me. Maybe Dad really was just tired. But as I walked around the side of the house, following the worn flagstone path toward the back gate, I heard it. First, a low thrum of music, a pop song I didn't recognize. Then, a swell of laughter, loud and unrestrained. Then the unmistakable clinking of glasses. My heart started to hammer against my ribs, a frantic, trapped bird. It felt like walking straight into a wall I couldn't see, one that had been there all along. I stopped at the edge of the property, hidden by the thick privet hedge that separated their yard from the neighbors. Peering through a gap in the leaves, I saw them. The whole family was there, Mom and Dad. Jason, my brother, holding court at the center of the table. Emily, my sister, beside him, laughing at something he'd said. Even my cousins and their kids were running around on the lawn. The entire backyard was glowing, strung with the same fairy lights we put up every year. They were all gathered around the long picnic table, the one Dad and I had built together the summer I was 16. A family project, he'd called it, though I was the one who spent weeks sanding the splinters out of the rough lumber and staining it a deep cherry wood, my hands raw and sore for days. Mom was at the head of the table, exactly where she always was, holding a pitcher of sangria. Her face was lit up with a brilliant smile that, from my vantage point, never seemed to quite reach her eyes. She was the queen of this court, pouring drinks, directing conversation. Jason was in the middle of some loud, unfunny story about his golf game, and everyone was hanging on his every word as if he were a world-famous comedian. Beside Emily, a golden retriever named Sunny, her dog, was sitting on a chair, a ridiculous paper party hat perched crookedly on its head. The chair was at the far end of the table. It was my chair, the place where I always sat. Hanging from the porch roof, illuminated by the warm glow of the party lights, was the cheap vinyl banner. Perkins Family Annual Summer Bash. It was the same one they'd used for the last 5 years. Underneath the printed text, Mom would always take a thick marker and carefully write our names, Jason, Emily, and Laura. I squinted, my breath catching in my throat as I tried to make out the familiar scrawl. My name was there. Or it had been. Now a thick, angry black line was scribbled through it, an act of such violent finality it felt like a physical blow. They hadn't just forgotten to write my name, they had actively, deliberately erased it. The wine bottle in my hand, a Merlot I'd picked out because it was Dad's favorite, suddenly felt impossibly heavy. It was a symbol of my constant, pathetic effort, my endless trying. I watched as Mom refilled Jason's glass, patting his arm with a look of pure adoration. She glanced down the table toward the empty, dog-occupied chair and her smile widened. The message was as clear as the summer sky. I wasn't just forgotten, I wasn't just uninvited, I was replaced, scratched out, made into a nothing. The pain wasn't a hot flush of anger or a wave of tears. It was a cold, clarifying shock that spread through my veins like ice water, freezing everything inside me. I didn't cry, I didn't storm into the yard and demand an explanation that would only be met with more lies. I just backed away slowly, melting back into the shadows of the hedge. They thought I was weak because I was quiet. They thought I was harmless because I was accommodating. They were about to learn in the most permanent way possible how wrong they were. I sat in my car, the engine off, the expensive wine sweating in the passenger seat. The street was quiet, insulated from the happy noise of the party just 100 feet away. My hands weren't shaking. My mind was perfectly, unnaturally clear. For years, I'd been the family's silent workhorse, handling the parts of the business nobody else wanted. The late-night paperwork, the tangled contracts, the impossible-to-please clients. Dad, Peter Perkins, had started the company, but he'd mentally checked out years ago, happy to play the role of the benevolent founder without actually doing any of the work. Mom, Diane, ran the family and by extension the company's social calendar, which she considered the most important part of the business. And my brother Jason got the credit for everything. I got the grunt work. During the last big recession, when things were looking grim, I'd worked for almost a year without a salary to avoid laying anyone off. In exchange, Dad had quietly signed over a significant block of company shares to me. They weren't the kind of shares that let you vote on big decisions, but they came with special clauses I'd made sure to include. Just a formality, he'd said at the time, scribbling his name without really reading the fine print. To make it right on paper, Mom never knew the details. In her mind, I just helped out with the books sometimes. I pulled out my phone, the screen glowing in the dark car. I scrolled to a number I knew by heart. Victor Hale, the board chairman. Victor was a no-nonsense man who valued results, not family names. He answered on the second ring, his voice crisp. "Laura, everything all right?" "Victor," I said, my voice as steady as a surgeon's hand. "I need you to call an emergency meeting and I need a freeze put on the primary operating accounts, effective immediately." There was a short, sharp pause on the other end of the line, a freeze. "Laura, that's a big move," Victor said, his tone shifting from casual to serious. "What's going on?" "It's a protective measure," I said, choosing my words with clinical precision. "I have reason to believe the company's funds are being misused for personal gain. The clauses tied to my shares allow me to request this to prevent further damage to the company's financial health." I didn't need to explain the complicated language of the company's founding documents. I just had to point to the right page, the one I had practically memorized years ago when I drafted the agreement for Dad to sign. Victor knew my work ethic. He was the one who saw me in the office at midnight during the downturn, surrounded by spreadsheets. He'd seen me pull the company out of the fire before while Jason was out networking on a golf course. He didn't ask me for proof, he trusted my judgment implicitly. "I'll need to bring in Maya," he said, referring to Maya Brooks, the CFO. "She's the only one with the access codes to execute a freeze this fast outside of business hours." "Good," I said, "bring her in. Tell her I authorized it based on Article 7, Section 4 of the shareholder agreement." He agreed without hesitation. The machine was now in motion, a machine they had all built but one I secretly held the master key to. I hung up and immediately sent a single follow-up email to Maya and Victor, citing the specific company rule that gave me this power. A digital paper trail, clean, professional, and undeniable. It wasn't an emotional outburst. It was a business decision. I didn't have to wait long. Maybe 20 minutes passed, the longest 20 minutes of my life. I just sat there in the silence watching the neighbor's porch light flicker. Then my phone buzzed. It was Jason. I ignored it. It buzzed again. Emily, ignored, then a third time from a blocked number which I knew was Mom using a cousin's phone to get around me screening her calls. I let it go to voicemail. Then the texts started rolling in. The first one was from Jason. What the hell did you do? The company card was just declined for the caterer. A minute later, another from Emily. Mom is freaking out. She said you're trying to ruin us. Why would you do this? I could picture the scene perfectly. Mom's perfect hostess smile would have curdled into a mask of pure fury. Dad would be looking confused and useless, blinking in the party lights. Jason, his face turning a blotchy red, would be sputtering about his card being declined in front of everyone. The party lights would still be twinkling, the music still playing, but the laughter would be gone, replaced by the electric hum of panicked whispers. Their perfect evening, built on the foundation of my exclusion, was now shattered. I finally looked at the expensive wine bottle still sitting on the passenger seat, then I got out of the car and placed it carefully on the curb. A gift for a stranger, I wouldn't be needing it. I started my car and drove away, not looking back. The first shot had been fired. My phone rang again as I was pulling into my own driveway. This time it was Jason, and I decided to answer. I wanted to hear it directly from him. Laura, turn the money back on, now, he barked, skipping any kind of greeting. His voice was tight with a spoiled rage I knew all too well. The money is frozen to protect the business, Jason, I said calmly, stepping out of my car and into the cool night air. Protect it from what? From me running it successfully? He scoffed. In the background, I could hear Mom's sharp, frantic whispering, feeding him lines just like she always did. He was her puppet and she was the master. You mean successfully running it into the ground? I replied, my voice flat. That catering bill for tonight's party, was that a legitimate business expense? Of course, it's networking, entertaining stakeholders, he blustered, using corporate words he'd heard but never truly understood. Aunt Carol is not a stakeholder, Jason, and that banner you bought, what was the line item budget for the black marker? He went silent for a beat. The only sound was his heavy, angry breathing. This is because you weren't invited, isn't it? He finally spat, his voice dripping with condescension. You're so petty, you've always been jealous of me. He actually believed it. In his world, my years of 16-hour days, my sacrificed weekends, my tireless work to keep the company solvent, all boiled down to petty jealousy over a backyard party. The thought was so absurd it was almost freeing. He truly had no idea who I was or what I'd done. The accounts stay frozen until the board meeting, I said, my voice like stone. Have a good night. I hung up before he could sputter another useless response. The next morning, I got a call from Robert Flynn, a senior board member who had always been a close friend of my dad's. He was old money, old school, and believed family businesses should be kept in the family. Laura, your mother called me at the crack of dawn, he said, his voice cautious and heavy with disapproval. She's spinning quite a tale, says you're having some kind of emotional breakdown. I'm perfectly fine, Robert. I'm just finally paying attention to the books without a filter, I replied, keeping my tone professional. Your family is, well, they're saying this is a hostile takeover, that you're trying to push them out after all they've done for you. A bitter laugh almost escaped my lips. A person can't take over a company they already saved from bankruptcy, I said. I'm just stopping the bleeding before there's nothing left to save. He sighed, a long, weary sound. Look, the Perkins name is tied to this company. A public fight is going to hurt everyone, including you. Can't you all just sit down and talk this through? His words were meant to be calming, but they felt like a veiled threat. He was telling me to stand down, to put the family's pristine reputation before the company's actual health. He was choosing their side, the side of appearances and comfortable traditions. "The time for talking is over, Robert," I said. "I've scheduled the emergency meeting. I expect you to be there." The call ended with a distinct feeling of unease. My potential allies were already being pressured, being swayed by my mother's carefully crafted narrative. The system I was counting on to deliver justice was already showing cracks. This was going to be harder than I thought. An hour later, my mother showed up at my apartment. She didn't bother to knock. She used the spare key I'd stupidly never asked for back. She just let herself in and stood in my entryway, her expensive purse clutched in front of her like a shield. "We need to talk," she said, her voice dangerously calm. Her face was a carefully constructed mask of motherly concern, an expression she hadn't worn for me in years. "Laura, your brother is worried sick about you. We all are." "You erased my name, Mom," I said, not moving from my spot in the living room, refusing to let her get comfortable. She waved a dismissive, perfectly manicured hand. "Oh, it was just a silly joke. The marker bled through from last year's banner when I was cleaning it. You're being so dramatic about this." The lie was so bald-faced, so insulting in its simplicity, it almost took my breath away. She wouldn't even grant me the dignity of an honest betrayal. She had to frame it as my own failing, my own over-the-top reaction. "You told me the party was canceled," I stated, my voice as cold as ice. "Things change. It was a last-minute get-together. I was going to call you, of course, but you know how things get with party planning." She took a step closer, her perfume filling the small space. "Honey, whatever is going on with you, we can fix it. But you need to unfreeze the accounts. We can't even pay our suppliers. You're hurting your father." She was trying to use Dad as a weapon against me, the one person in the family I still had a sliver of confused, residual hope for. "I'm not the one hurting him," I said, looking her straight in the eye, letting her see the emptiness where my fear of her used to be. "You are. You're being hysterical," Mom snapped. Her mask of concern finally dropped, revealing the cold, hard fury that lay beneath. It was the face I recognized from my childhood, the one that appeared whenever I failed to meet her impossible standards. "You have no idea how the real world of business works. You're just a glorified bookkeeper. Your father and I built this company from nothing." "You built the company Christmas party," I corrected her, my voice low and steady. "I built the financial models and spreadsheets that kept it from going under 3 years ago," she scoffed. "Those shares your father gave you mean nothing. They're a token, a little pat on the head." "You have no real power here, Laura." She actually believed it. They had handed me the keys to the entire kingdom and had never once bothered to read the fine print on the key itself. Her breathtaking arrogance, her complete underestimation of me, was my greatest weapon. She saw me as an emotional child throwing a tantrum, not as a strategic opponent who knew where every single one of their skeletons was buried. "Unfreeze the accounts, Laura," she ordered, her voice like steel, "or you will regret it. You'll be cut off for good." It was the same threat she had used my whole life, the threat of withdrawing her conditional, transactional love. It had always worked before. "Too late," I said, walking to my apartment door and holding it open for her. "You already cut me off. You used a black marker." She stared at me, her eyes filled with a venomous rage I'd never seen up close. And for the first time in my 36 years, I wasn't afraid of it. I was relieved. I finally knew exactly who I was fighting. After Mom left, the smell of her perfume lingering like a toxic cloud, I called Maya Brooks, the CFO. "Maya, I need access to the detailed expense reports for the last 6 months. Everything." "Victor already approved it," she said, her voice all business. Maya was efficient, sharp, and had no patience for office politics, which was why I trusted her. "What am I looking for?" "Look for Jason's corporate card expenses and flag any payments to vendors we don't recognize." An hour later, a secure file appeared in my inbox. I opened it, my stomach tightening with a sense of dread. It was so much worse than I had imagined. Jason had been using his company card as a personal piggy bank. There were lavish dinners at restaurants I couldn't afford, receipts for designer clothes, and a weekend trip to Las Vegas, complete with a 5-star hotel stay. He had listed them all with vague, official-sounding labels: client entertainment, travel for business development, team morale event. But the real shock was the invoices. There were dozens of them, all paid out to a consulting firm I'd never heard of, JP Creative Solutions. The payments were large and regular, totaling tens of thousands of dollars over just a few months. A quick search of the company address listed on the invoices showed it was nothing more than a P.O. box in a neighboring town. It was a shell company. Jason wasn't just incompetent and lazy, he was actively stealing from the business. He was embezzling. My hands trembled as I scrolled through the digital copies of the payment authorizations. Each payment to JP Creative Solutions required a second signature for approval, a standard company policy for any amount over $1,000. A senior manager had to sign off, and every single one of the authorizations was signed in his familiar, sloping script by our father, Peter Perkins. My stomach didn't just drop, it felt like it had been surgically removed. All this time, I had wanted to believe Dad was just passive, a victim of Mom's manipulations just like I was. I told myself he was too tired or too beaten down to stand up to her, but this was a signature. A deliberate, repeated act. He knew, he had to know, he was helping Jason do it. I thought back to all the times Dad had looked away when Mom praised Jason for a success that was actually mine. All the times he'd said, "Let's not rock the boat, Laura," when I tried to point out a problem. It wasn't weakness. It wasn't passivity, it was complicity. He wasn't just checked out of the business. He was an active participant in the lie that was rotting it from the inside out. He was helping one child steal from the company while his other child was working for free just to keep the lights on. This wasn't just about a party anymore. This was about a fundamental betrayal that went to the very core of our family and the business he supposedly built on a foundation of integrity. The father I thought I was protecting didn't even exist. My sister Emily called me that afternoon, her voice wobbling with fresh tears. "Laura, what are you doing? Mom says you're trying to send Jason to jail," she wailed into the phone. "I'm trying to save the company that Emily has a job at," I said, my patience worn down to a single frayed thread. "But Jason would never steal, he's not like that, he's just, bad with money. Mom always helps him out." Her naivete was so profound it was almost a form of malice. "Mom is helping him funnel company funds into his personal bank account. That's not being bad with money, Emily. That's a crime, you're twisting things," she cried, her voice rising. "You've always been so hard on him, so judgmental, why can't you just let this go for once? You're tearing the family apart." Her words hit a nerve that was already raw and exposed. I was the one tearing the family apart, not the ones who were lying, cheating, and stealing. She was the perfect enabler, willingly blind because the truth was too ugly and inconvenient for her to face. She preferred the comfortable lie. "This family was already broken, Emily," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "I'm just the one who finally turned on the lights so we could all see the mess." "Dad is so disappointed in you," she said, her final, desperate blow. "Good," I replied and hung up the phone. Any lingering hope that any of them would see the truth was gone. I was completely and utterly on my own. The conversation with Emily was the final push I needed. It was the confirmation that my old approach, working hard, hoping for recognition, trying to fix things from the inside, was not just futile, it was self-destructive. They would never admit wrongdoing. They would only close ranks, point their fingers at me, and paint me as the crazy, vindictive enemy. Robert Flynn's warning about a public fight echoed in my ears. He was right. It was going to be a fight, and it was going to be public. So be it. I sat down at my laptop, my fingers moving with a newfound certainty. I opened my email and attached the damning files. The invoices from the shell company and Jason's fraudulent expense reports. I composed a new email addressed to the entire board, Victor Hale, Robert Flynn, and the 2 other independent members. The subject line was simple, direct, and impossible to ignore: emergency board meeting agenda, evidence of financial misconduct. In the body of the email, I wrote a single, concise paragraph. Attached is preliminary evidence of embezzlement by Jason Perkins, facilitated by Peter Perkins. The account freeze will remain in place until a full, independent audit can be completed. I expect this to be the first and only item on the agenda for our meeting. I stared at the bright blue send button for a long, silent moment. This was it. There was no going back from this. I was no longer trying to get a seat at their table. I was going to burn the whole table down. I clicked send. My email to the board caused an immediate explosion. Victor Hale called me within 5 minutes. This is worse than I thought, Laura, he said, his voice grim. An independent audit is absolutely the right move. I'll back you 100%. But it was Maya Brooks, the CFO, who called an hour later and dropped the real bombshell. Laura, there's something else, she said, her voice low and tense, as if she were afraid of being overheard even on the phone. About a year ago, your mother asked me to help her set up a special discretionary fund for executive bonuses. I know about the bonus pool, I said. It's standard? No, Maya insisted. This was a separate ledger completely off the main books. She said it was to handle sensitive family expenses that were related to the business. Your father approved it. I pushed back. I told her it wasn't standard practice, but they insisted. My blood ran cold. A second set of books. That wasn't just embezzlement, that was premeditated, organized fraud. She told me the money was to help Jason with a short-term debt so he could focus on his work, Maya continued, her voice filled with a regret that I could feel through the phone. She swore it would be paid back by the end of the fiscal year. It never was. Can you get me access to that ledger, Maya? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. I made a copy for my own protection, she said. I knew this day would come. I should have spoken up sooner. I'm so sorry, Laura. The apology barely registered. My mother hadn't just enabled Jason. She had masterminded a secret system to defraud her own company, the company she claimed to have built. Maya sent the encrypted file. As I opened it, my world shifted. It was a detailed record of every single dollar siphoned from the company into her secret fund. The money hadn't just gone to Jason's shell company. It was so much bigger than that. It had paid for the down payment on his luxury condo downtown. It had paid for my sister Emily's lavish wedding last spring, a wedding I had helped plan for weeks, thinking my parents were just being incredibly generous. It had paid for my parents' exclusive country club membership, their golf fees, their expensive dinners. They weren't just stealing to cover Jason's mistakes. They were systematically draining the company's profits to fund their entire opulent lifestyle, all while I was working weekends, skipping vacations, and pouring my own money back into the business to keep it profitable. But the most sickening part, the part that made me feel like I was going to be physically ill, was a series of large payments to a high-end public relations firm. The memo line on each payment read, Project JP. Elevation. They were using company money that I had earned for them, to hire a firm to professionally build Jason's reputation, landing him puff pieces in industry magazines and getting him invitations to speak at conferences he was in no way qualified for. They weren't just giving him credit for my work anymore. They were paying to have that lie professionally packaged, polished, and sold to the entire world. My work, my effort, my life hadn't just been ignored. It had been harvested, repurposed, and used as the raw material to build a golden throne for my brother, all with stolen money. I hung up the phone and walked to my window, looking out at the glittering city lights but seeing absolutely nothing. The sharp pain from the party, the sting of that black marker on the banner, felt like a tiny paper cut compared to this gaping, mortal wound. Every sacrifice I had ever made for my family replayed in my mind, each one a fresh new betrayal. The college I chose, a state school close to home so I could keep helping with the business on weekends. The big promotion I turned down at another firm right after graduation because Dad said he needed me to get through a tough quarter. The years I spent believing that their approval was just around the corner, that if I just worked a little harder, sacrificed a little more, my hard work would finally be enough to earn my place. It was never going to be enough. It was never about earning a place. My purpose in the family was not to be a daughter, it was to be an engine, a resource to be drained until I was empty. And my silence, my desperate need to keep the peace and avoid confrontation, had been the primary fuel for that engine. By not complaining, by not demanding my due, by quietly accepting their scraps of affection, I had made it easy for them. I had co-signed their betrayal of me every single day. The shame of that realization was suffocating. I wasn't just a victim in this story. My own compliance had made me an accomplice in my own erasure, and that ended now. I went back to my desk and pulled the secret ledger onto the main screen, the numbers glowing cold and ugly in the dark. This was the kind of proof that didn't need a speech. It spoke for itself. It said you stole, it said you lied, it said you used me. I could use it like a lever to quietly force them out. I could take over and keep the family name polished for the world. We could all pretend that Dad retired and Jason moved on to new projects. We could keep the lie going just with a new lead. My hands hovered over the keyboard. I thought about every year I'd handed my time, my sleep, my peace to them, believing it would buy me a seat at their table. I thought about the black line through my name, thick and final. I thought about the way Mom's face lit up when she saw the chair where I used to sit, now filled with a dog in a party hat. A quiet exit would be good for business. It would be easy, and it would be wrong. If I cleaned this up in the dark, they'd slip away with a new story to tell. They'd still own their version of the truth, and they'd do it again to someone else the first chance they got. My phone felt heavy in my palm as I called Victor. He answered on the first ring. "Laura, I'm done asking nicely," I said. "The audit isn't enough. I'm calling a vote to remove Peter and Jason from the board and to end their jobs, effective immediately." There was a long silence. I could hear him breathe. "You're sure?" "Yes," I said. The calm I felt was like a locked door. "But listen, don't schedule it for next week. Schedule it for the soonest time allowed." "No time for them to spin this." "I'll set it for 3 days from now," he said. "Prepare your case." "I already have it," I told him, looking at the ledger. "And Victor, no backroom deals, no gentle landing. We do this in daylight." "Understood," he said, voice firm. "I'm with you." I hung up, stared at the screen a second longer, and understood something clear and simple. This wasn't just about me anymore. It never had been. "And one more thing," I said when I called Victor back, my voice steady. "I'm sending the ledger to Kelly Morgan, our public relations director," he asked, surprised. "It's a signal," I said. "No more secrets. We'll tell the truth, whole and ugly." "Laura, this could destroy them," he warned. "They destroyed themselves," I said. "I'm just not hiding it." I forwarded the files to Kelly with a short note. "You'll need this." My fingers didn't shake. The old urge to protect the family name was gone. I wasn't after payback for a banner. I wanted the rot out of the walls. I wanted the company to stop being a piggy bank for people who thought love meant control and lies. It wasn't revenge anymore, it was justice. And it was the only way I could claim my own name back. Mom didn't answer me in the boardroom, she answered me in the news. 2 days later, I woke up to a dozen alerts pinging my phone. A story was everywhere, first the local business journal, then picked up by blogs. The headline made my stomach twist. "Family feud threatens Perkins Company." Anonymous sources, meaning Mom and her friends, fed a neat little tale to the reporter. I scrolled with a tight jaw. The story said I was unstable. It called my actions hostile and erratic, the words quoted like they came from someone who knew me well. It talked about a minor family disagreement that I'd blown up out of spite. It said I'd struggled in college after a breakup, as if heartbreak at 20 was proof I couldn't be trusted at 36. It hinted I was being guided by outside interests who wanted to steal the company. It painted me as a greedy daughter set on ruining her father's legacy. I read it once straight through, then again, slower, the way you press a bruise to see how much it will hurt. My hands tingled like they were falling asleep. My phone buzzed with messages, some from old coworkers, some from people I barely knew. "Are you okay? What's going on?" One text from a number I didn't recognize said, "Shame on you." I put the phone face down. The room suddenly felt small, the walls inching closer. Kelly called while I stood over the sink staring at a coffee mug I hadn't filled. "I'm so sorry," she said. She talked to everyone. She framed this as a tragic family drama with you as the villain. "It was always going to be this," I said. My voice sounded like it belonged to someone else, but my heartbeat was steady. "Can we respond? I can make a statement about an investigation," Kelly said. "If we say too much now, we look vindictive. She wants you to lash out." "She wants me to look like the story she wrote," I said. I could picture Mom at her kitchen table sliding a plate of muffins in front of a reporter, saying the word concern with fake tears in her voice. Kelly exhaled. "We'll keep it calm, we'll keep it simple. I'll get you a draft in an hour." "Do it," I said. "And Kelly, thank you for not running." "I'm not going anywhere," she said. "Hold your ground, Laura." I hung up, the sour taste of the article sitting heavy in my mouth. My private hurt was now a public circus. They couldn't win on facts, so they came for my character. I rinsed the empty mug and set it back in the cabinet. Then I charged my phone and waited for the next hit. Victor called that night after the sun had slid behind the buildings and left the sky a dull purple. I was sitting at my kitchen table with a legal pad and a pen, writing down the names of people I trusted. The list was short. He didn't bother with small talk. "This is getting ugly," he said. "Today took a bite out of us. Investors don't like drama. Our share price dipped. It's not a crash, but it's not nothing." "It's a smear campaign," I said. "She's making it about my mental state so no one looks at the numbers." "I know," he said, sounding tired in a way I hadn't heard before. "But people believe stories more than spreadsheets. We need to show a united front. Right now, we look like a family tearing itself apart and dragging a company with it." I closed my eyes for a second and pictured the party lights on the patio, the black line across my name. "She won't stop," I said. "Even if I backed down, she'd find a way to make me the problem." "I'm not asking you to back down," he said quickly. "I'm asking you to be smart. The meeting is in 2 days. Between now and then, keep your head, no public rants. No online fighting. Let Kelly handle the press, we'll handle the vote." "She's calling board members, isn't she?" I asked. A pause. "Your father is," he said. "He's been begging people to protect the family from you. He's not arguing facts. He's pleading. It's effective." My stomach pulled tight. I pictured Dad on the phone, voice shaking, asking old friends to save him from his daughter. "He knows what he's doing," I said, but I wasn't sure if I believed it. "They're not trying to win on truth," Victor warned. "They're trying to make you radioactive so that even if you win the vote, you inherit a broken thing no one wants to touch." I ran my thumb along the edge of the paper until it bent. "She'll burn the house down if she can't own it. Then we stand outside with the fire hose," he said. "Hold steady, Laura." After we hung up, the apartment felt colder. I walked to the window and pressed my palm to the glass as if the city lights could warm me. They didn't. I went back to the table and underlined 2 words on my list: tell the truth. The pressure found a weak point the next morning. It was Robert. He called just after 8, voice thick like he hadn't slept. I made tea while he talked, letting the kettle hiss fill the silences. "Laura, I can't be part of this anymore," he said. "I've known your father for 30 years. We started in business together. I can't vote to throw him out in public." I stirred honey into the mug and watched the swirl. "Even after what you saw, this should be handled quietly," he said. "Behind closed doors, you've turned it into a spectacle. Your mother says you're working through your issues by punishing them." I laughed once, a sharp, ugly sound. "They used company money like it was their own. They built Jason up with my work and hired praise for him. There's nothing quiet about what they did, Robert." He didn't answer that. "I'm recusing myself from the vote," he said finally. "I can't support you and I can't stand with them either. I have to protect the company." "Protect the company?" He said it like it was noble. What he meant was, I have to protect my friendships. I thought of him at our house when I was 12, clapping Dad on the back and telling him the family name meant something. That same name was the mask they wore while they emptied our accounts. "You're choosing not to choose," I said. "I'm choosing stability," he replied, like that settled it. The stability you're protecting is a lie, I said quietly. You know that. He cleared his throat. I hope you find peace, Laura, he hung up. I didn't realize I'd been gripping the mug too hard until the hot ceramic bit into my palm. I set it down very carefully and stood there listening to my old refrigerator hum. One less vote. One less person willing to speak the truth out loud. I felt the loss like a weight between my shoulder blades. For a minute, I let myself lean against the counter and breathe. The kitchen smelled like tea and lemon. Outside, a siren wailed and faded. I could go to the bedroom, crawl under the covers, and pretend none of it was happening. I could let Mom write the story she wanted and fade out of my own life. I straightened up instead. I picked up my phone and texted Maya, "We keep going." Then I messaged Kelly, "Stay the course, no emotion, facts only." My hands were steady again, the circle around me had gotten smaller. Fine. Smaller is stronger when it's made of people who won't lie to your face. I took a sip of tea. It had cooled, but it was still sweet. I had never been good at walking away. It turned out that was my best trait. The retaliation moved from screens to my living room. I was rinsing a bowl when the window by the couch exploded. It sounded like a gunshot, sharp cracking, then a rush of night air. I screamed and dropped the bowl. It hit the sink and shattered into thick white pieces that skittered onto the floor. My heart slammed against my ribs. For a second, I thought the city itself had burst into the room. A fist-sized rock rolled to a stop under the coffee table. There was a rubber band around it, pinning a folded note. The breeze pushed the torn curtain so it breathed in and out, making the lamp's shade wobble. Dust hung in the air, sparkling in the streetlight like weird glitter. I forced my feet to move through the little field of glass. The pieces clicked under my shoes like ice. The note was printed in block letters, every stroke trying too hard to look neat. Stop before you destroy everything. I held the paper between two fingers like it might burn me. My mind went straight to Jason. He was always the guy who kicked doors when he got mad. He always thought force solved problems. I could picture his flushed face and tight jaw, the way he loved sending messages he thought were clear. I called the police with my voice still shaking. I gave my name. I said someone had thrown a rock through my window. The operator was gentle. An officer came, took down the basic details, peered at the note like it might confess, and told me what I already knew. Without a camera or a witness, there wasn't much they could do. He suggested I get a camera and a stronger lock. He asked if I had any enemies. I laughed at that, a short, bitter thing. Only family, I said, and he didn't know what to do with that. After he left, the apartment felt like a cold mouth. I swept glass into a crunching pile and taped plastic over the broken pane. The smell of dust and the faint metallic scent of blood rose up. Somewhere I'd nicked my thumb without noticing. I washed the tiny red line under running water until it went pale again. Fear sat on my chest like a sleeping cat, heavy and stubborn, but under it something harder tapped until it cracked through. Rage, flat and clean. They thought they could push me back into the corner where I'd lived my whole life. They'd forgotten what corners make people do. I threw the note in a drawer, not the trash. I wanted to remember exactly what they were willing to do to keep their story safe. I called Maya because I didn't trust the quiet. "The ledger," I said without hello. "The one Mom made you build, was it only a computer file?" Maya didn't even pretend to be surprised by my bluntness. "Both," she said. She insisted on a hard copy, a red binder. She called it the official record. "It's in the safe in your dad's office." I sat down, the plastic over the window rippling behind me. "Why would she keep a paper trail?" I asked. "That's reckless." "She didn't think so," Maya said. I could hear her clicking through something on her end. "She told me digital files can be edited. That paper is purer." Those were her words. I pictured Mom touching a red binder like it was a family Bible. I thought of how much she loved props, anything that looked like tradition and truth. Something pushed at the edge of my mind. It didn't make sense, then it did, suddenly and all at once. "Maya," I said, "I need you to compare the dates in that ledger to Dad's travel schedule for the past year." Maya went quiet. I could practically see her eyebrows pull together. His travel schedule, why? Trust me, I said. Just check every authorization date against when he was out of town. If the ledger is what I think it is, some of those approvals happened when he wasn't even here. She took a breath. All right, give me a few minutes. I'll pull his flights and his card receipts. They're on file. I put her on speaker and set the phone on the table. While she worked, I stared at the tape fluttering on my window. The note in the drawer felt like a hot coal I'd tucked into the kitchen. The city moved outside like it didn't care. I wrapped my arms around myself and rocked the smallest bit, the motion I'd used since I was little when the world felt too big. In the next room, the clock ticked loud enough to hear. 10 minutes passed. 15. I paced between the kitchen and the broken glass, retracing the same 6 steps until I was dizzy. My phone buzzed. Oh my God, Laura, Maya said, her voice hushed like we were in a church. You were right. Tell me, I said, my mouth was dry. I checked every authorization line from the ledger against your dad's travel, she said. On at least 10 of those dates, he wasn't even in the country. I have the flight numbers. He was on planes or in hotels out of state or out of the country. I leaned hard on the counter until my elbows hurt. The world tilted a little and then snapped back. So he couldn't have signed them. No, she said, but the signatures match his exactly. I compared them side by side. It's not just someone scribbling his name. It's like a stamp of him. It hit me in the gut. A forgery, I said, the word tasting like chalk. Maya exhaled. I think so, and there's more. Remember how your mother forced the paper ledger? It makes sense now. It's a perfect loop. Paper that looks more real to people and signatures that look exactly like his. If anyone checks, it all points toward your dad and Jason. My knees went weak, not from shock, but from the clean click of something sliding into place. Mom wasn't just shielding Jason, she was building a firebreak a mile wide between herself and any blame. She wasn't propping up her son, she was designing a scapegoat. She always loved neat endings. This was the neatest of them all. Maya, I said, forcing my voice to stay even, who had access to Dad's office safe while he was gone? Your mother, she said without pause. And the office manager, but only with your mother standing there. She keeps the code under, and this is the wild part, a photo of the family. Of course she did. Hide the weapon under a picture of the people you'd use it on. I closed my eyes, and for a second I could smell Mom's perfume and hear her laugh. Thank you, I said. This changes everything. It does, Maya said. What are you going to do? I looked at the taped plastic fluttering like a small flag. Finish it, I said. The revelation didn't make me feel better. It made the room colder, like someone had opened a door to January. Fear for Dad stacked on top of the anger in me like bricks. Maybe he'd signed the first few, maybe he'd believed her, but the rest, he was a mark in her story. The clock ticked. The board meeting was 2 days away. 2 days is nothing and forever at the same time. I stared at the legal pad on the table with my 2 words underlined, tell the truth. Mom's plan sat right in front of me now, sharp as a drawn knife. She'd let me force out Dad and Jason. She'd step in with a trembling voice and say she supported integrity and transparency. She would cry. People always discounted tears from men and treated tears from women like a confession. She'd play the part of a wife who had to choose between honesty and her husband. She'd choose honesty, and the room would love her for it. She'd walk away with clean hands while the blood pooled under someone else. I could smell it. The press would write the story for her, a brave matriarch cleaning up after the men in her life. She'd burn her husband and her son to keep herself warm. If I took the quiet win, if I got their resignations and thought the truth had been served, she'd use the opening to gather power like a dress around her ankles. I saw how she'd do it on the board too. She'd whisper stability to nervous men. She'd call Robert in the morning and talk about a light at the end of the tunnel. She'd offer to hold the fort while the audit ran. By the time the dust settled, she'd be the only one left standing who looked reasonable. She didn't have to hold the truth, she just had to hold the story. The safest plan I had, a clean vote, a firm ousting, wasn't safe at all. It was a pretty box she'd wrapped for me with a bow. If I stepped into it, the lid would close. I walked to the broken window and pressed the back of my hand to the tape. The plastic was cool and trembled like a heartbeat. I thought of Dad's shaking hands at the dinner table when he forgot to take his medicine. I thought of how he'd sit quiet while Mom described my work like it was Jason's, then say afterward to me privately, "You know how she gets." I'd thought he was weak. Maybe he was also trapped. 2 days, that was the clock now. 2 days to do something that cut through not just the lies in the ledgers but the bigger lie that Mom had woven around all of us since we were kids. 2 days to make sure she couldn't slide into the empty space pretending to be a hero. I went back to the table and combed my hair with my fingers, a nervous habit from high school that had never left me. The note in the drawer seemed to scratch at the wood like it wanted out. I took a breath, long and deep, and felt it burn a little going down. I wasn't playing for a seat anymore. I wasn't playing chess anymore either. I was going to take away the board. I texted Maya, "Thank you, don't tell anyone about the travel match, not yet." Then I typed a new message, stared at it, deleted it, and typed it again. "Victor, we need to secure the room for the meeting. No phones, I'll explain when I see you." I sent it and listened to the quiet. The city murmured through the plastic like a stranger outside my door. 2 days. Then we'd see what truth could do when it wasn't kept on a leash. I needed more than numbers on a screen. I needed something I could hold up in a room and say, "Look." I needed Dad to speak out loud and say what I already knew. The board meeting wasn't the end anymore, it was the stage. I called Emily. It rang and rang. The second it clicked to voicemail, I hung up and tried again. On the third try, she answered, her voice small. "What do you want?" Listen," I said, keeping my voice steady. "I know you think I'm the bad guy. I know Mom's telling you I'm out to hurt everyone, but you're being used. We all are," she sniffed. "You've always wanted to be the hero." "I wanted to be a daughter," I said. "There's a red binder in Dad's office safe. It's the record Mom keeps, the one she calls official. It's not a family scrapbook. It's where the money went. I need you to get it." "Why would I help you?" Her words were tight with suspicion. "Because the money in there paid for your wedding," I said softly. I let the truth sit between us heavy. "I helped plan it. I thought it was a gift. It wasn't." "Don't you want to know what else she lied about?" Silence pressed against my ear. Somewhere on her end a door closed, the sound hollow. "I'm not asking you to take my side," I said. "I'm asking you to look with your own eyes." "Then you can choose," she exhaled, a shaky gust. "I don't know the safe code." "You do," I said. "It's Daisy's birthday. Our dog," she sounded stunned. "That's ridiculous." "It's how she hides things in plain sight," I said. "You and I are the only ones who'd remember it isn't her anniversary or Dad's favorite date. If you open the safe and you don't see a red binder, walk away. But if it's there, bring it to me. Please don't tell Mom." "Not yet. She'll notice," Emily whispered. "Then don't take it far. Take pictures, send them to me. I need the proof before the meeting, today if you can, tomorrow at the latest." She went quiet again. I could hear her swallow. "Laura, I don't want to pick sides." "You've been on a side your whole life and didn't know it," I said, not unkindly. "You have a chance to pick yourself for once." "I'll think about it," she said. "Don't call me again today." "Emily," I said, and my voice cracked in a way that embarrassed me. "Thank you if you try." She hung up. I stood in the kitchen with my phone to my ear like the conversation was still happening. The plastic on the broken window rattled with a changing wind. I put the phone down and stared at it like I could force it to vibrate with a message from her. I told myself not to hope, but I did. It came anyway, that little light. I waited for her call until the sky turned black and then gray again. It never came. At 7 in the morning, my phone rang. I didn't even look at the name before I answered. "Emily," Mom's voice slid into my ear, smooth as glass. "Looking for this?" she asked, and the sound of paper crackled close to the receiver, a showy crinkle. I could see her fingers, perfect nails, tapping the edge of a red cover. "It's so very interesting, Laura, so many numbers. So many stories." My knees felt watery. "Emily told you," I said. The words fell out of me in a flat, empty way. "Of course she did," Mom said, sweet as frosting with a blade buried inside. "In the end, she knows what family means. She chose us." Family isn't a trap, I said, but it came out small. She made a smart choice, Mom said. Unlike you, you could have stayed in your role, you could have kept your little spreadsheets and helped your father like a good daughter. But you wanted a crown, now you'll have nothing. I heard a page flip. She was reading it like a magazine. My stomach clenched so tight I thought I might be sick. The ledger, my one clean piece of proof, was in her hands. She could shred it, lock it away, wave it around only when it helped her. You think that book saves you? I asked, my voice rough. I don't need saving, she said. I need silence. You don't know how to be quiet, so I'll make you irrelevant. Her words slid under my skin, razor thin. My throat burned with a sudden, wild urge to cry. I swallowed it down. Where's Emily? At home, Mom said, bored. She feels terrible, of course. I told her you'd try to make her feel guilty. You're very predictable, Laura. Put her on the phone. No, Mom said, you don't get to use her anymore. Something cracked in me at that. Not the big break I'd expected, just a hairline fracture that made everything feel delicate. You did this, I said softly, to all of us. She made a little humming sound, the one she used while choosing a sweater. No, honey. I built a family, you're the one with a lighter in her hand. The call didn't end so much as it went cold. The line clicked off and the quiet blasted in like winter air. I stood in my kitchen and stared at my phone until the screen dimmed and died. A few minutes later it rang again. Mom didn't give me time to say hello. Your father is drafting a statement, she announced like she was reading a weather report. He's taking full responsibility. You mean you're forcing him to, I said. Rage finally climbed up my throat, hot and bitter. He's doing what a good man does when his daughter has a fit and tries to ruin what he built, she said. He will admit to poor judgment and poor oversight. He will resign. Jason will resign too. They will be the martyrs and the board will feel sorry for them. Everyone loves a tidy ending. I shut my eyes. I could see it play out the way she described, the way she'd arranged it like centerpieces at a banquet. And you, I asked, what do you admit to? She laughed, a bright, sharp sound. To loving my family too much, she said. To trusting the wrong people. I'll be the one to clean it up. The board likes that story. The public loves a woman who sacrifices. And me, she didn't even pause. You'll be the ungrateful girl who destroyed her own father over a petty grudge because she wasn't invited to a party. No one will trust you, not here, not anywhere. Every person I know will hear that you're unstable, that you can't be managed, that you blew up a company over hurt feelings. You'll never work in this industry again. I'll make sure of it. It was a clean kill shot. She didn't want to beat me, she wanted to salt the ground. She wanted me to learn that the price of stepping out of place was total ruin. You're a monster, I said. I didn't recognize my own voice, it was too calm. I'm a mother, she corrected. And this is me protecting my family from you. I am your family, I said, and the words felt useless as they left my mouth. My family, she said, and I could hear the smile, is the people who know how to stay grateful. The call ended again. The dial tone hummed in my ear, mean and empty. I lowered the phone and set it on the table as if it might break from a hard landing. I didn't sit. I couldn't. I walked a slow circle around the kitchen and living room, stepping around the spot where the glass had shattered last night. The plastic on the window clicked with little puffs of wind. The apartment smelled like coffee I hadn't poured and dust I couldn't quite sweep away. My hands felt too small for my wrists. I was alone. Not just in my apartment, but in the story. My list of names, the short one I'd written and underlined, suddenly looked like a joke. My allies were spooked. The board was spooked. The press was eating the tail my mother fed them with both hands. My sister had chosen the line that felt safe. My father was being used as a shield he was too scared to put down. A dark little voice slid up beside me, familiar as my own reflection. You were never good enough, you were always the problem, look at you now, invisible like they wanted. I leaned my forehead on the cool door of the fridge and let the cold seep into my skin. Memories marched through me in perfect order, cruel and tidy. Me at 19, answering phones in the office on Thanksgiving while everyone else watched a parade. Me at 26, staying late to clean up a mess Jason made, then watching him get praised for stepping up. Me 3 months ago, telling myself to be patient because love would arrive if I earned it. I slid down until I was sitting on the floor with my back to the fridge and my knees hugged to my chest. The plastic on the window fluttered and snapped. The apartment felt like a tomb. My phone lit up with a text from a number I didn't know. Just a single line, "You should be ashamed." It hit like a tiny rock tossed from far away. I flipped the phone over so I couldn't see the screen. Nothing left, that's how it felt. No proof I could slam down that mom couldn't twist. No sister I could talk to without her reporting back. No father brave enough to say he was scared. Someone had thrown a rock through my window last night, and now it felt like the rock had been thrown through me. I don't know how long I sat there. The refrigerator hummed and cycled off. A dog barked outside, far down the block. My legs went pins in needles, numb from the way I was folded up. Then a thought, small and stubborn, pushed through like a weed in a crack. Maya, she had given me the digital copy. It wasn't the red binder, the thing Mom could hold and wave and hide, but it was the same truth in a different outfit. It was a story that matched the numbers. It was enough to ask the right questions in front of the right people. And Dad, the fear in his eyes when things got close to breaking. I had always called it weakness, and sometimes it was. But there was something else in it too. He wasn't just passive. He was afraid of her. He had been afraid for years. People who live in fear sometimes need a door to be opened for them. Sometimes they need someone to name what they're looking at before they can see it. Maybe if he saw a way out where he didn't have to be the only villain, he'd step through. Maybe if I stood in that room and spoke in a voice I used to reserve for paper and screens, he would borrow my courage for 1 minute. 1 minute might be all it took. It was a thin hope, a thread, but it was a thread I could wrap around my hand and pull. I opened my eyes and looked at the plastic over the broken window. It moved in and out, steady as breathing. I got up off the floor, slow because my feet had gone dead and prickly, and I stretched until my back cracked. The ache in my chest didn't go away, but the fog around it lifted just enough to see the next step. I picked up my phone and powered it back on. I wrote to Maya, "We still have enough." Then I typed a note to myself, questions for Dad, travel dates, authorizations, who had the safe code. I saved it under a boring file name because old habits die hard. I splashed cold water on my face until my skin tingled and patted it dry with a towel that smelled like laundry soap. I was still alone. I was still bruised. But I wasn't done, not yet, not when I could still see the shape of the truth, not when the quiet could still be used as a knife in the right hands. 2 days to the meeting. 2 days to find the breath I needed to blow down the paper house she'd built. I told the voice in my head to sit down and be quiet. Then I made a cup of coffee, black and hot, and drank it standing up, staring at the window until the sun finally burned through the rippled plastic and turned the whole room gold. The conference room felt colder than usual, like the air conditioner had been set too low on purpose. The long table gleamed, every chair lined up, every water glass placed exactly in the center of its coaster. Victor sat at the head, a small stack of folders in front of him. He nodded as I walked in, not quite a smile, but close. Robert sat 2 chairs down, eyes on his hands, his mouth a thin, worried line. Mom sat near the far end, angled just enough so the light hit her cheekbones. She had picked a soft gray dress and a pearl necklace. It was the costume of a careful, loving woman who didn't deserve what was happening to her. Dad sat beside her, pale, his shoulders slumped like he was trying to make himself smaller than the chair would allow. Jason was on her other side, jaw clenched, red around the eyes. He looked like a boy who'd been told he was grounded and couldn't believe it. Victor banged the small wooden mallet he only used for show. "We're calling this emergency meeting to order," he said. "Before we begin, Peter Perkins has asked to make a statement." The words hung there heavy. Mom turned her head and gave Dad the tiniest nod, barely a twitch, but I saw it. He stood slowly, paper shaking in his hands, and cleared his throat. I take full responsibility," he read, voice rough, "for errors in judgment that have put this company at risk." Therefore, I am tendering my resignation." He looked up, eyes glassy. "I hope you'll forgive me." Jason pushed his chair back with a scrape that made everyone flinch. "I'm resigning too," he muttered like it was the world's dumbest chore. "Effective now." Around the table, people shifted, relief and discomfort mixing on their faces. Robert reached for his glass and missed it by an inch. Mom rested a hand on Dad's sleeve, the perfect picture of a sad wife standing by her man. Her eyes found mine for a fraction of a second. The tiniest smile tugged at the corner of her mouth. It was a victory grin, private and mean. "I object," I said. My voice came out clear and loud like it had been waiting behind my teeth. Chairs creaked as every head snapped toward me. "I object to this statement being accepted until the full truth is heard." Robert straightened. "Laura, this is not the place for family. This isn't family drama," I said. "It's about what was done to this company, to the people who work here." I looked at Victor. "I need 5 minutes." Victor's eyes were steady. He nodded once. "Proceed." I turned my laptop toward the big screen on the wall. The room lights dimmed a little and the monitor clicked to life. My hands didn't shake. I clicked and the secret ledger filled the screen, line after line in simple, ugly type, dates, amounts. The name that made my skin crawl every time I saw it, JP Creative Solutions. "This," I said, pointing, "is one of the records your errors in judgment refer to, Dad." Money moved out under something called a discretionary fund. It didn't cover business needs. It paid a shell company named JP Creative Solutions. "Fabricated," Jason said fast. "Fake, she made that up." "Did I?" I clicked again. There were his expense reports now, neat as you please. "Here are your dinners, Jason, the designer suits, the trip to Las Vegas, the hotel with the rooftop pool." A soft, bitter laugh rippled from one of the independent members, then died at Mom's glare. "You labeled each one as a client meeting or work travel, but there are no clients listed. No partners, no employees. It's you and whoever you decided to bring." Jason opened his mouth, then shut it. He looked to Mom and she stood, leaning on the table with both hands. "This is disgusting," she said, her voice shaking in that perfect, practiced way. "Peter has taken responsibility. He is willing to accept the consequences. What kind of daughter drags her father through the mud like this in front of strangers?" I met her eyes. "You're right about one thing," I said. "It is a humiliation, but he's not the one who should be humiliated." A hush settled. Even the building seemed to go quiet. I walked closer to the screen and highlighted a set of dates. "Dad," I said, and my voice gentled. "On these dates, authorizations move money to Jason's shell company. They have your signature." I clicked. On the other screen, I pulled up his travel records. "On those same dates, you weren't here, you were out of the country." Robert's head snapped up. Victor leaned forward, fingers steepled, eyes on the screen with a focus that made the skin on my arms prick. "Anyone can edit those records," Mom said too quickly. "This is slander. We should stop this now." "We'll hear her out," Victor said. I stayed where I was, close to Dad but not too close. "Dad," I said softly, "you didn't sign those, did you?" He shrank a little, like the air went out of him. I signed some," he said. His eyes met mine for a split second. "I saw a boy in there, scared and tired. She said it was to help Jason until he got back on his feet. I signed a few." I thought. He looked at Mom, flinched at her stare, then looked back to me and kept going. "When I was away, she said she'd handle the paperwork." "Peter," Mom hissed, low and deadly. "Don't let her twist. Who had access to your office while you were gone?" I asked, still gentle, still steady. "Who knew your safe code?" He swallowed, sweat beaded on his upper lip. "She did," he whispered, then louder, like the word cost him. "Diane did." He wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. "She told me she needed the files, that it was urgent. She knows my signature better than I do. She kept the records." Victor's head turned to Mom slowly, like he was afraid to spook something dangerous. "Diane, is that true?" Mom's face went cold, smooth, and then exploded into heat. "This is madness," she shouted. "He's confused, he's old and exhausted, and she has been poisoning him against me for weeks." "Enough," Victor said, calm and hard. Sit down. She didn't. You are not going to let her destroy us because she's angry about a party, she snapped. You men will regret taking her side. I stepped back from the screen. He's not confused, I said and turned back to Dad. You were scared, weren't you? He nodded once, tiny, but it was there. She said if anyone found out it would kill the company, he said. She said it would be my fault. It wasn't your fault, I said. Then I looked at the board, at their faces, some angry, some shocked, some just tired. The shell company exists. The money left, the expenses are real, and you've all seen how the story was built online to make me look like a problem and her look like a saint. This isn't a family spat. It's a plan. Murmurs rose, low and nervous, running around the table like wind in dry leaves. Victor tapped the mallet against the table lightly. Order. Mom turned on Dad, eyes black and bright with fury. You would do this to me after everything I've done for you, she spat. After I stood by you while you drifted and let her make decisions over our heads. You are weak, Peter. You always have been. He flinched at the word weak, and in that flinch I saw 20 years of tiny cuts. I'd taken those cuts too. I was done bleeding for her. And one more thing, I said, and my voice dropped into something colder than I'd ever used in this room. The banner. I held her eyes so she had to stay with me. At the party you told me was canceled, who crossed out my name? Jason frowned, confused. What banner? For a heartbeat it looked like Mom might lie. Then her face did a small thing, barely a twitch, not even a full blink, but it was enough. She knew she'd made a mistake she couldn't tuck away. The room felt like it held its breath. That wasn't Dad's idea, I said. It wasn't a joke. It was cruelty, personal, and now we all know exactly how far that cruelty spread. Her mouth trembled. She reached for her purse with a quick, jerky movement and knocked over her water glass. It fell, splashing across the table, darkening the papers in front of Robert. He shoved his chair back. She grabbed the purse like it could carry her out of this moment and stood so fast the chair scraped. No one spoke. No one moved to help. She stormed toward the door, heels hitting the floor sharp and fast, and yanked it open so hard it hit the wall. She didn't look back. The door swung shut and the room exhaled. Silence held for a long beat that felt like years. Jason stared down at his hands, picking at his cuticle like a child caught cheating on a test. Dad sank into his chair like someone pulled a plug at the base of his neck. He looked old in a way that made my chest ache. He put the paper statement down as if it had never belonged to him. Victor cleared his throat. He looked pale, but his gaze was steady, moving around the table, landing on each face until they met his eyes. In light of what we've just heard and seen, he said, voice formal but real, I propose the board accept the resignations of Peter Perkins and Jason Perkins, effective immediately. His eyes landed on me. And that we open a full, independent investigation into the actions of Diane Perkins. No one argued, no one even coughed. Robert lifted his hand like it weighed a brick. The independent members nodded, slow and grim. Victor banged the mallet. The sound made me jump like thunder in a small room. He took a breath and turned to me. Laura, he said, and for the first time his voice gentled like a father in another, better story. We need steady hands right now. We'd like to offer you the position of interim chief executive officer, pending a formal vote. All the air in my lungs left me at once, then eased back in. I looked around the room. At the faces of the men who had watched my mom command every event like a stage. At Dad, who finally looked like he knew the weight of what he'd handed to her all those years. At Jason, who now saw what it looked like when the shield he never knew he had slipped away. It wasn't a victory lap, it wasn't fireworks, it was a quiet kind of justice that made my throat tight. I thought of the banner again, my name crossed out, and I felt something inside me uncurl. I accept, I said. My voice was steady, my hands didn't shake. Somewhere far away, a church bell rang the hour. Inside the room, nothing moved for a breath, then the spell broke. Papers were shuffled, chairs scraped, and the world started again. Victor nodded once. Let's get to work, he said. And this time when people looked at me, they saw me. Not the afterthought, not the girl with the spreadsheets. Me, it's been 6 months. The days don't feel like a fight anymore. They feel like days. The company is steady. We hired a third-party team to count every dollar and they mapped the whole mess from start to finish. The picture was clear. Mom and Jason drained us to fund their lifestyle and Jason's fake glory. When the facts came out, they packed up and moved out of state fast and quiet. The legal part is still running in the background, handled by people who speak that language. I don't need to live in that storm every hour. I go to the office, I do the work, and I go home. We changed the name. Perkins Tech is now Innovate Forward. I signed the paperwork and felt something unhook inside me. The old name used to feel like a chain. This one feels like a road. Dad is living in a small condo downtown. The first time I visited, it smelled like dust and black coffee. He'd lined up his medicine on the kitchen counter like soldiers. We sat on the couch, both of us stiff, with the television on mute. He apologized once, a quiet, broken sound. He said he didn't know how to stand up to her. I told him I know he was a victim too. It wasn't forgiveness, not all the way, but it was a start. Sometimes we talk about simple things now, whether the food truck he likes, a documentary about bridges. Those calls feel like a bridge, too. Emily sent me a long email that took me a full day to open. She said she was sorry. She said she was scared and did what Mom told her, like always. I haven't replied. I reread it sometimes. My heart needs more time. At work, I brought in new people and new habits. Nothing fancy, clear spending rules. Real oversight, pay that makes sense. Meyer is still here, solid and calm, and Kelly handled the public mess like a professional and a friend. Victor stops by my new office sometimes and asks if I'm eating. He says it as a joke, but I know he means it. I have plants on the windowsill now. They're alive. It still surprises me how much that matters. Last Saturday, I hosted a barbecue in my backyard. I strung warm lights across the fence because I like how it makes dusk feel gentle. I rented a small grill with a stubborn lid that kept sticking, and Victor teased me about it while he flipped burgers with the serious focus of a surgeon. Maya brought peach cobbler that tasted like summer. Kelly showed up with a bag of chips and a bottle of lemonade, saying she was off duty from saving our image and wanted to taste real food. I stood on the deck and looked at my friends. People laughed. Someone turned on music not too loud. The evening air smelled like charcoal and cut grass. I thought about the party at my parents' house, the old banner, the long table under the lights, my name scratched out. That night felt like a lifetime ago, like a dream I walked out of and never went back to. There was no banner in my yard, no names written in marker, no chair saved for a dog in a paper hat. There was just a picnic table I'd picked out and paid for, simple, sturdy wood that didn't splinter. People took seats where they wanted. No one watched me to see how I would react to a new jab. No one used me as a mirror for their image. I didn't have to beg for a spot. I had built my own table. A friend handed me a glass of wine and tapped her glass to mine. "To the chief," she said, grinning, and the word made me laugh because it still felt strange. "To the quiet," I said, and it felt right, not the silence I used to live in, the kind that choked me, a different quiet. The kind that comes after you tell the truth out loud and survive it. The kind that lets you sit in your own skin without wanting to crawl out. I looked up at the lights, at the soft glow they cast across faces I trusted, and I raised my glass again just a little. I didn't need a banner with my name on it anymore. I had my voice. I had my work, I had people who saw me, and I had a future I'd chosen step by rough step without asking for permission. Being erased by the people who are supposed to love you hurts in a way that's hard to explain. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, tell your story in the comments. Your voice matters here. And if this spoke to you, subscribe for more.